community. Okay, that was kind of tough. Let's do that again, okay? Good evening, Horizons community. Well, I'm delighted to be part of your pre-dinner entertainment. My name is Daniel Lee. I am the Executive Director of the Levi Strauss Foundation and proudly a member of the Horizons Foundation Advisory Council. It is my tremendous honor tonight to present the 2017 Horizons Foundation Leadership Award. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., arguably the greatest American, said this: "Love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power without love is reckless and abusive." Dr. King goes on to say, power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. In my humble view, not ready for the applause yet, just wait. We're just getting started here, okay? In my humble view, there is no organization today or at this moment that reflects and embodies these prophetic words like the Transgender Law Center. Okay, now you can applaud. Not yet. No. I have a lot more to say here. The Transgender Law Center, known as TLC, changes law, policies, and culture so that all people can live safely, authentically, and free from discrimination, regardless of their gender identity or expression. TLC was founded in 2002. How many of you know that it was a project of the National Center for Lesbian Rights? Yeah? And just so you know, in 12 days, TLC will be celebrating its 15th anniversary at the Bentley Reserve. The Spark event is one of the hottest tickets in town. I want to see all of you there, and there are tickets still available, fortunately, in 12 days at the Bentley Reserve. Back to TLC. Early in its history, it scored big wins in its first 2 years. It helped revise the city of San Francisco's regulations to prohibit gender identity discrimination. It also passed legislation in Oakland banning gender identity discrimination in housing, employment, public accommodation, and city services. TLC in the past decade has published a series of landmark studies, reports with timely data that color in the lives of transgender people and their families across the US. TLC showed that 29% of trans people nationwide reported living in poverty, with double the rate of unemployment compared to the general population. Now, in its 15 years since its inception, TLC has responded to more than 18,000 requests from transgender and gender nonconforming people through its helpline, and held more than 750 legal and advocacy workshops. Now, some of you might have followed this organization, and in its early days, it had this distinction of being California's first fully staffed transgender legal organization. The Transgender Law Center has repeatedly burst their buckles to emerge as a bona fide national player. And get this, TLC is now the largest trans advocacy organization in the United States. Okay? We all know that it is precisely in times of crisis that advocates show their true colors. And our country is facing the backdrop of the most disruptive political moment in our country's modern history. Okay, the hisses can come right now, yeah? Number 45's playbook, as we are all painfully aware, aims to see to it that vast swaths of the population are triggered, and endeavors to stay a step ahead with further waves of triggering, disruption, and distraction. And we know that few communities have borne the brunt like our trans communities. TLC has told me executive orders or vitriolic rhetoric targeting trans people are seemingly passed down every week or every month. Here's the rub. In the face of this, the Transgender Law Center is showing its true colors with an incredible bias towards action and a diehard insistence that no one is left behind. Now, let me, if you'll indulge me, to share a bit of the technicolor of how TLC is rising to this current political moment and showing true grit. And I think you will share my conclusion that TLC is made for these times. Now, since last November's elections, TLC is witnessing a 45% spike in requests for legal information or assistance, including overwhelming demand for identity card changes and expungement of criminal records. They are surging to meet this demand through by expanding their nationwide pro bono network and stepping up the frequency and reach of their legal clinics. Secondly, since the marriage equality backlash in 2015, we have seen a concerted backlash. The marriage equality ruling, since that ruling, we've seen a backlash in the form of more than 300 plus anti-LGBT bills at the state and local level, including initiatives to allow businesses to discriminate based on religious belief, and the height of indecency and meanness prohibit trans people from using bathrooms matching their gender identity. TLC is at the vanguard of building a cadre of grassroots activists all across the country that are organizing against these ways of discrimination at the state and local level. And I think that deserves some applause. Now, the other group that arguably bears the brunt equally to trans folks, or at the same level, are immigrants. And TLC is seeing soaring need for legal services for transgender and non-gender conforming immigrants. Now, true to its values, TLC is flexing to meet the needs of those who are hardest to reach in our communities and in detention centers. And finally, what inspires me most, TLC is refusing to hide behind the formality of the law and the mantle of the law, but it's expanding its remit to train the trans leaders of tomorrow with a focus on those places around the country with greatest need. Now, 2 years ago, the Trans Law Center saw that the South has 1/3 of all LGBT people in the US, right? But only 3% of resources flow there. They did not blow air kisses, right? They did not send Hallmark cards, but they've opened an office in Atlanta, and this office in Atlanta will be the seat of this organizing in the South. How exciting is that? Now, they've held boot camps already for 60 trans activists and aim to expand to many more in 2018, and this is enormously exciting. Now, the Levi Strauss Foundation has had the honor of working closely with the Transgender Law Center, and through an initiative called Pioneers in Justice, is working with a group of next-gen social justice leaders here in the Bay Area and supporting their efforts to get greater impact by taking risks, by reaching beyond their bubbles, and experiment with new ways to drive social change. And among these pioneers in justice is TLC's incredible leader, Kris Hayashi. And let me state the obvious. Meaningful social change requires outstanding leaders. Okay? And if I may, for one moment, say, as part of the Levi Strauss Foundation, in my line of work, you know a pioneer when you see one. Allow me to declare that in every respect, both Kris and the Transgender Law Center are pioneers. Okay? So now we're going to have a little bit of a moment here. I love this event. And last year, I had one of those moments, and it was when Kate Kendall was introducing Mark Leno. And I had that moment when I was swelling with pride, because the National Center for Lesbian Rights, which takes cases to the Supreme Court and never lets go of its values, is based here in San Francisco. And I had one of those moments. I kind of had the feels, you know? I have a secret desire. Well, there's no such thing as secret desire in the city, right? And that is that everybody goes forth from this room and passionately spreads the good news of the Transgender Law Center, which is a jewel of the Bay Area. I want everyone here to tell at least 10 people you know. 10 lovers, 10 friends, 10 coworkers, whatever you have it there. And here's the note. We have a true jewel in the crown here in the Bay Area. The Transgender Law Center, with 30 staff strong, is everything we would dream of in a powerful, visionary national organization. It is a fighting force for our populations that are under attack. It's blowing the top off its identity as a legal service organization, not only doing incredible legal services and impact litigation with a case that could go to the Supreme Court, but going far beyond the call of duty to build the spirit and the power of the community nationwide as a gardener to the grassroots. TLC leads, I've seen this, y'all. In DC, there are organizations that try to be palatable. Right? They want to fit in, and they leave communities high and dry, and in that process become milquetoast as a force of social justice. TLC leads with its values of radical inclusion, of nimble responsiveness, and true empowerment as a gardener to the grassroots. So let's go back to Martin Luther King's words at the opening, and allow me to share a simple paraphrase. And this is from Cornel West, who is a professor of mine, and he says this: "Justice is what love looks like when it shows up in public. Justice is what love looks like when it shows up in public." As a prophetic national organization headquartered in our Bay Area that is custom made for these turbulent times, TLC is that love. And tonight it deserves our full attention, our spirited ambassadorship, and our generous support moving forward. So, as we welcome finally to the stage the incredible leaders of the Transgender Law Center, Noyola, the Deputy Director, and Kris Hayashi, their Executive Director, let's give TLC all our TLC.
So first off, thank you so much, Daniel, for that amazing introduction. And thank you to Horizons for recognizing the Transgender Law Center, which feels particularly important in the times we're in. As the Transgender Law Center celebrates our 15th year, much of our success is because of many of you in the room with us tonight. The National Center for Lesbian Rights was our first home. Out of an organization that has worked tirelessly for our communities for 40 years, the Transgender Law Center was born. We began here in California by documenting work on issues facing the transgender community, from employment to housing to healthcare to name and gender changes. We began to work with transgender people incarcerated in prisons and jails because we were clear that none of our community should be forgotten. We formed partnerships to support transgender immigrants who have come here seeking safety and refuge. As our work shifted nationally, we saw the opportunity to fight for more of the transgender community on a larger level. One clear example of that was our case on behalf of Mia Macy. So everyone has heard what happened this past week, and no matter what the Trump administration says, it's clear that the law protects transgender people from employment discrimination in this country. From early supporters of our work like Horizons and Levi's, from partnerships with sister organizations here in the Bay Area, like the SF LGBT Center, the Transgender Intersex Justice Project, Gala, and our Family Coalition, we have expanded our relationships to truly build a powerful trans and gender nonconforming movement. Our programs expanded to raise up transgender youth and their families in partnership with our friends at GSA Network through a project called Truth. We expanded and joined forces with Southerners on New Ground to make sure our families and communities in the South were getting support. We established the groundbreaking Positively Trans that works with transgender people living with HIV and AIDS to produce research, to tell their stories, and in the last couple of years has dramatically changed the conversation of HIV in this country. And that was just the beginning.